So you all know the terrible story about what happened in Charlottesville over the weekend on Saturday when a 20-year-old alt-right, and we'll get to that phrase later in the segment, when a 20-year-old alt-right protester, if you want to call him that, rammed his car at high speed into a crowd, killing one, injuring many others. But the question I want to know is, where were the police, and who told them to virtually stand down during a day of protest? I'm Steve Green. This is Right Angle on BillWhittle.com, brought to you by our paying members, and with me, of course, Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. Gents, the mayor of Charlottesville, let me make sure I've got his name correct, Mike Seiner, has been all over the news since Saturday afternoon, making a real name for himself. He won't call President Trump by his name. He's just been referring to him as 45. He's been taking the moral high ground in this, which, of course, any politician would do after a tragic event like we saw over the weekend. But it was his police force that weren't there, that allowed what should have been an ugly day turn into a murderous day. Scott, if you're the mayor in a situation like this, what do you tell your police?
Well, and I am withholding judgment on this only until I get all the facts in on this, because I've heard other murmurings that no, in fact, that's not what he said. But I'm sure that the true story will never come out. But
no.
I think, at least the way it's being reported now is the idea is, let's keep them out of the way so that things so nobody gets hurt. And that would seem to be, protecting the police. And there is an argument to be made that the presence of police actually gins up radicalism on the part of extremists. And we've seen this everywhere from Iran to Berkeley, where, it's like the cameras don't even start rolling until the pigs show up. And then all of a sudden, then everybody gets real radical because they know at that point that no real violence is going to break out, that the police will be a restraining force. So I don't really know what happened here. However, I do think that there is something to be said for a mayor of a city. You say he took the moral high ground. I mean, what is the moral high ground?
I didn't say he earned it. I said he took it. That's an important distinction.
Well played.
He claimed the moral high ground for himself, perhaps. So, I have a problem with that phrase. I also have a problem with the term alt-right, frankly. And I don't use the term simply because it implies that something about it is right. And there's nothing right about it. And in fact, it's not even alt. It's not alternative. It's the same old racism. It's the same old Nazism. It's the same old, strain that infected communism from its very beginning. It's just evil, and they don't deserve to have anything that sounds even vaguely, political. They're just hateful people who want to hurt other people, who want to deprive other people of their rights. And, the scrum that they got into down there that resulted in the death of at least one person and injury to many others is a despicable stain, not just on their whole movement, so to speak, but on the behavior of the mayor of that town.
Yeah, Scott, give you a quick follow-up here. One of the jobs police have during a protest is to do things like man the barricades to prevent vehicles from gaining enough speed to plow into crowds. Where were the barricades? Where were the police?
Yeah, and again, I hesitate to second guess what I don't know all about yet, and I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to hold back on criticism here. I just feel like I don't really know what happened, and I'm sure that there will be an investigation. I'm sure there'll be a federal investigation to determine, who was instigators here and whether the police were allowed to do their jobs.
Yeah, I look at a scene like this over the weekend where you've got people waving Soviet flags on the one side and some people waving Nazi flags on the other side. And I think of Henry Kissinger's remark about the Iran-Iraq war back in the 80s when he said, "'Tis a pity they can't both lose." Bill, back in the 60s, we got into this a little bit yesterday on our backstage show for members, but I want to get into this a little more deeply today. I talked about this idea that back in the 60s, during our last great age of protest, whether or not you agreed with the protesters' motives or goals, they were out in the streets taking on the man, and in their own phrase. And here we have a situation where it at least looks like the authorities were helping to gin up violence between these two groups to serve their own ends. Is that what it looks like to you?
I would like to make the same caveat that both you and Scott have made
Sure.
in terms of not having the full picture and so on. So this is obviously just speculation. But if the mayor has such a problem, if he's got such an emotional problem that he cannot name President Trump, if he simply won't speak his name, then there's something emotionally wrong with this guy. This is not the kind of level-headed person you want to be running a city. If you're going to be that adolescent about things, then let's just understand that's the starting ground. I, as you may have noticed, did not hold Barack Obama in high regard, but I was able to speak his name.
Really?
And I was, and I was able to praise him during those few occasions when I thought he was doing the right job. So let's start there. The decision to stand down the police is it seems to me, is either one of two things. Either he decided to take them, to have the police stand down because he thought it would increase safety, or he decided to take them out because he thought it would decrease safety. Now, if the first is true, if he thought it was a better, safer option to not have the police be there, then he's badly informed, as usual.
Yeah.
As you've said, this is the police may cause the cameras to start rolling and to people start acting up more, but they're much more likely to commit serious crimes when the police are surrounding them than they are when not. And I'm reminded of the Miami riots that I lived through when I was down in that city. There were 2 or 3 of them, Overtown, Liberty City, and so on. And it looked like a third one was going to happen. And the third time, they had every single police officer, state trooper, everywhere, just standing everywhere on overpasses, freeway overpasses. And it just didn't develop. It just really got squashed because so often these things are led by a handful of people who are the real, lunatic radicals. And those are the people you have to kind of stop early. I would like to say one more thing about what Scott said about the alt-right, because it's intentional that the left and the media has labeled these racist bastards as alt-right. There's nothing conservative about these people, as far as I'm concerned. And I did, I thought, oh my God, and I thought, why am I trying to, I don't have to defend these bastards. I can't stand them. I absolutely hate them. And here's a little news flash for you folks. One of the reasons why I spend so much time and energy, and so do my partners, talking about how we're not Nazis and we're not racist. Well, the main reason really is because we're not Nazis and we're not racist. If we were Nazis and racists, we'd be proud of this fact, like the rest of the Nazis and the racists out there marching in the streets. My dad fought to destroy Nazism, and of all the things that were drilled deep into my head at a very early age, this is it. I hate that swastika with a burning passion, And when I see people carrying a swastika flag and then have like an American flag patch on a camo uniform, it makes me ill. It just makes me sick. If you think that's what America's about, then you've got some history reading to do.
Yeah, and Bill, the flip side of that really is the so-called good guys that are being presented in this little melodrama, this deadly melodrama we watch. Some of them were waving hammer and sickle flags, which is every bit as evil as that swastika. Communists killed maybe 100 million people in the 20th century, a record far bloodier than Hitler's. Although if Hitler had been given more than 12 years, I think he would have equaled the commie bastards too. But you know what? I was drawn to an Ayn Rand quote. I don't know if you can see it right now, but I've got a Fountainhead anniversary cover on my office wall here.
Can't see it.
And Ayn Rand's best villain was Ellsworth II, and he had this great evil villain monologue with Peter Keating in the last third of the book, and he was talking about Europe of the 1930s, specifically Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, and he was talking about them really just being the same thing. He said, one country is dedicated to the proposition that man has no rights, that the collective is all. The individual held as evil, the mass as God, no motive and no virtue permitted except that of service to the proletariat. And then he said, that's one version. Here's another, a country dedicated to the proposition that man has no rights, that the state is all, the individual held as evil, the race as God. No motive, no virtue permitted, except that in service to the race. Well, let me tell you, if it's a choice between the proletariat and the race, it's not a choice at all. Choose liberty. Knock both of these guys in the ash heap of history, please. And that is your right angle on what we know so far of Charlottesville. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the paying members of BillWhittle.com for making this show possible. We'll see you next time.